Hello, and welcome to installing Identity Manager 12.6 SP1 on a Websphere cluster. Part 1, Understanding Prerequisites. The purpose of this video is really not to provide a step-by-step demo of setting up Identity Manager, but more to provide some talking points of what information should be collected and what tasks should be performed before an install. This presentation assumes that you will have installed Websphere 7.0 network deployment and that you have installed SQL Server 2008 on the correct hardware. We are also going to assume that this will be for a non-FIPS mode configured install and that you will integrate with SiteMinder at a later point. The SIB DDL generator is a BAT file that is installed with Websphere. It is required to run to create the SQL scripts that will generate the schema for the message store. This step is sometimes missed as we do not include it in our documentation, as the documentation assumes that there is a predefined knowledge of third-party products. The schema generator can be used to generate schemas for multiple database types, including Oracle, DB2, and SQL, as we are going to use for this install. After running the SIB DDL generator, we will need to edit the generated text file for use in our configuration. The things that we need to edit would be the user ID that we want to manage this schema for. At the bottom of the generated text file, you'll notice that there are lines pointing to IBM user, and we will need to change those. With the edits completed on the previous slide, you will now need to run this against the store database to create the schema and the schema objects. This can be done using the SQL Query Editor window. With this step, we will begin collecting the data for Websphere. On the install docs, we have worksheets that should be used for the collection of this data. You will need the server name, being the application server name of the first member of the Websphere cluster, the profile name that was created for this application server cluster, the cell name, the node name, and the cluster name. Disabling Websphere application global security for the install is highly recommended. As we have seen mixed results without this being done, randomly objects have not been created. To disable Websphere application global security, you'll need to log into the deployment manager. At this point, we have to make sure that we have the proper SQL drivers. After installing them, there are some post steps that we have to perform on the database. You should run the MS-DTT service and configure the JDBC distributed transaction components. There will be some errors with running the XA install SQL script. These errors will be caused by the drop table commands, and this is expected as this is the first time the script was run. Also, we will need to make sure to add the XA SQL server to the master database. This step is one of the most neglected steps in the prerequisites, making sure that there are no active changes in the master config and clearing out all of the temp folders for Websphere. The SOAP timeout setting is also skipped most times, and this can negatively impact performance. At this point, you have been introduced to the prerequisites for installing IM 12.6 SP1 on a Websphere cluster with a SQL Server object store.